Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Jen, there was quite a remarkable moment today. The Toronto Star reported remarks that the president said he wanted off the record. According to the Star's source, Trump told Bloomberg that he has not made any compromises at all with Canada in these trade talks. He suggested he was scaring Canadians by threatening them. President Trump reported saying, quote, off the record, Canada is working their ass off, the president's words, and every time we have a problem with a point, I just put up a picture of a Chevrolet Impala here. Now, the president is now complaining that these off-the-record comments came out. He said the following just a short time ago.
It said, off the record. And I said something strong, but it's my belief. In the end, it's okay. Because at least Canada knows how I feel. So it's fine. It's fine. It's true.
Now, there is some question as to who actually leaked those off-the-record comments there. But you've worked in a White House before. When a president speaks about a close ally that way and basically says, I'm not going to, do any talking with them. I'm just going to kind of beat them over the head. Does that work in your view?
Not typically, and I think if we are suggesting this is a, chess game of strategy from Trump and his team, I think we're giving him a little too much credit. I mean, what we saw announced on NAFTA earlier this month was just a small sliver of what needs to happen. I've been involved in trade agreements and trade negotiations as well, and there's a lot more that would need to happen in order for it to be finalized. In this particular case, I think it's also important to note, I worked with those Bloomberg reporters for 8 years in the White House. Never once did they violate anything I said off the record, anything President Obama said off the record. There's no way it comes from them, and that's what he accused them of. So there is a question as to whether this was somebody in the White House. The transcripts typically go around broadly who wanted this information out for strategic reasons, for other reasons, or even whether it was Trump himself, because we're in bizarro land, so that's possible.
It is Monday, the 3rd of September, Labor Day of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays, because workers have to work. And River City Hash Mondays gives you all the caloric intake you'll need to power through the day. Especially if you're burning those calories. Especially if you're burning them. Well, folks, another weekend. It was overload again, information overload. We did have McCain's funeral, and that took quite a bit of media attention, and that just must not stand in the new Trump America. All right? It shouldn't. Does it amaze you how quickly those people who touted the warrior, the American warrior, are so quick to disrespect? Well, I'm not for war or necessarily warriors, but Even in my my blinded liberal bias, I still recognize John McCain's sacrifice as being something I don't know if I could have endured. Could anyone? Did he? Huh? I mean, really? But he came back and he did work that was, well, bigger than himself. Isn't that all part of the healing process? Not to become so self-absorbed in one's own pain, but to direct that into something other than self? I always consider that to be the gauge of a good life. And so it isn't so shocking to me that the deplorable base, along with their Herr Fuhrer, would so readily disrespect John McCain. And his daughter, by the way, who got massive death threats. Because we are snowflakes. And I just want to remind Trump bros and Cult 45 sycophants where the origin of snowflake came from. And I'm looking at you, Trump bro. Yeah. Calling a member of the family a snowflake. Oh my God. Well, the origin of snowflake? Yeah, it came from Nazi Germany, describing the incinerated remains of Jews as they snowed all over the countryside. It's ghoulish. Oh, I didn't know it was meant. I didn't have no yeah, ignorance is no excuse. It's no surprise here either why that term snowflake is so readily embraced by neo-Nazis, racists, fascists, and what have you on the American conservative political spectrum. Yeah, that's the problem with critical thinking. We're just blinded by history and science and the truth. The truth isn't what we make it. I mean, if you had read Descartes, if you had read Heidegger, if you had read any of the basic texts of what it is to think, we already went through all of this quite a while ago. And Candace Owens, whining that politics was the main focus in the eulogies of a funeral that's never been done before. It is so terrible. Oh, she never read the Iliad. She's never read any Shakespeare. And as far as I can tell, there's a funeral, because I've also heard that, the funeral for our Lord Jesus Christ was, quite staid, and, no one ever talked politics against Caesar or the Pharisees or any of that. But as far as I can tell, there's a funeral celebration of sorts every year for that guy. It's like a stage play, and I got to tell you, there's a lot of passion in it. A lot. So, Candace Owens, I know you'll never pick up a book. But the deplorable base, living in their basket, their little silo, they know what the truth is because it's told to them by Herr Fuhrer. Yes, indeed. Well, what else is on the menu today other than the fact that it looks like Trump leaked himself? John Barron, maybe? When this whole thing about Bloomberg leaking the off-the-record comments by Trump, I wondered if John Barron had leaked that tidbit of information that Trump wanted out there for Justin to see. He can't stand Trudeau. Trudeau, is everything that Trump is not. And I don't need to go into it. You all can tell. But what else do we have on the rest of the menu after we consider that it looks like really leaked himself. I know it's Monday, it's Labor Day. I go for the cheap shot. Why not? Well, on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. A Texas doctor claims female doctors get paid less because they, quote, do not work as hard, end quote. If this guy's not single, I think he will be soon. And he may remain single. I really think so. At least we don't know. Apparently he doesn't like women. Kris Kobach will now have to campaign while under investigation by a grand jury. Yeah, illegally stripping people of their rights to vote. And a court moved a lawsuit ahead that he had hoped to quash. But who knows? They may not be able to take his name off the ballot, and I don't know. I don't think they even have a polling place to vote in prison. And California restores Obama-era net neutrality protections, and the telecoms are already threatening to sue. Because, of course they are. They want to throttle. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where Trump is suspected of targeting FBI agent Bruce Ohr because he was part of a secret Justice Department program created to flip Russian oligarchs. Yeah. No wonder Trump wants to get rid of all the Russia investigative team that's been working at the FBI since, even before he was taking Russian money back in the 80s. Curious, isn't it? And Brazil's 200-year-old National Museum was hit by a massive fire yesterday. Now get this. With over 20 million artifacts lost. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Go to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. You will notice to the rightish of the page the chat room link. And that is a pretty darn good way to engage. Kelly Lincoln monitors that. And if you're thinking about it, she's selling off. I don't know. She's cutting off a toe, cutting off a few fingers so that she can, keep the heart. So we don't want her to be cutting off appendages to be able to afford just, breathing, please. The upgrade on her hardware and software is still in effect. And if you could throw some money her way, that would be very helpful. So thank you for that. To the rightish of the chat room link, actually, if you're going all the way around the world and then you come back around here, then it would be to the rightish of the chat room link, but it would be quicker just to look to the leftish of the chat room link. And then you would see our contribute donate buttons for Netroots Radio. And that is how we keep our lights a-blinking here on the modem and Resistance Radio beaming 24/7, 365. We are unable to do this without you, and thank you for your generosity. And you can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Check us out over on Facebook. Got that Facebook Live thing happening, and thank you, Kelly, for taking care of that. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, all one word. And I also post the diary on Daily Co's with the show notes and links, an integral part of this show. And please, I suggest you peruse it. There's some other entertaining things that you might want to check out too. well, keep you occupied for a bit. So I'm on Daily Kos as Justice Putnam. You can check the show out on Facebook, and we are on Twitter. A little bit different on our handle there. That's West Coast Cookbook is at Cookbook West on Twitter. Pick up podcasts of the show by way of iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spreaker, YouTube, etc., etc., etc. All right. Well. Labor Day. Boy, I guess people have forgotten what Labor Day is really about. It's, I gotta say, a little bit about, shall we say, honoring the worker. Do we do that anymore? Maybe not. And actually, I should tell you that another reason why we celebrate Labor Day in America, here in, the end of summer, beginning of fall, is because they certainly didn't want to do it on May Day. International worker, you are a socialist. Ooh, socialist. I love how the right wing and specifically the basket of deplorable Cult 45 Trump bros and gals who throw the word socialism around, and they accuse people of being socialists, and you look at them and go, yeah, they're almost as socialistic as an Eisenhower Republican. And then you look at the history, and they were convinced that Eisenhower was a communist. I mean, look, he beat the fascists in Germany. He is the enemy, apparently. Apparently. Well, I don't know. Work. Work is good because work can be done as, I don't know, it can be used as therapy. It can be used as avoidance. I mean, remember the good old days? I think this is what Trump doesn't get because he pines for the good old days where he could use his job as a way of avoiding any real conversation at home. I mean, come on. I mean, men did that forever, and I think they do it now. I mean, jeez. Who wants to have a real conversation? I mean, who has time for that? And, the way that this guy goes after Bruce Ohr's wife, for instance, because Bruce Ohr's wife works at Fusion GPS, which is an American company. But Trump doesn't get that in America, at least, I got to tell you, in France, Britain, Germany, let's see, I would put in, really, Australia. I put that in there. I mean, heck, Belgium, Switzerland, the list goes on and on of where women somehow, I don't know, by their own abilities as a human being, are able to establish a career independent of a man setting it up for her or keeping her at home barefoot and, in spiked heels, gardening. Well, that's enough of that. We are in a new era, aren't we? I mean, people just feel unabashed about being able to express their most base sentiments. This first story out of Raw Story by Martin Sismer is, I think, pretty emblematic of this new Trump America. Of course, then he whines, I didn't, it was off the record. Yeah, all right. Well, a Texas doctor is facing outrage, and well, he should, after claiming that female physicians get paid less because they do not work as hard. Really? I don't know. Does this guy go home and make dinner for the family, feed the kids, do all the laundry? No, of course not. The hardest part of his job on that is probably cutting the check so that the help does it. Talk about working hard. Well, the comments were made by, get this down, there's also a link in the story, so check it out, please. Were made by Dr. Gary Teagues, who practices in internal medicine, and a feature story in the Women in Medicine issue of the Dallas Medical Journal. Yes, there is a pay gap. Female physicians do not work as hard and do not see as many patients as male physicians. Most of the time, their priority is something else, like family or social or whatever, those mundane things that keep you away from, life. I added that last part. He then goes on to say, nothing needs to be done about it unless they actually want to work harder and put in the hours. Yeah, these damn women, all they do is they go home and take care of their kids, and then they have to do these social things like make dinner for the family. Well, Teagues, age 53, which means he should know better, runs a Plano practice that was founded in 1996 and which has 3 doctors, one of them a woman. Oops. Apparently, she doesn't work as hard as the other 2. Teagues told the Dallas Morning Journal that his comments were misconstrued and that he did not know that they would be published. Well, no one does when they're like spouting off with a cocktail in their hand, with a little soiree. I didn't know anybody were going to put it in the paper. He said, my response sounds terrible and horrible and doesn't reflect what I was really trying to say. I'm not saying female physicians should be paid less, but they earn less because of other factors. Women might take longer with their patients, and that's a great thing. But then their pay is less. Well, of course, when medicine is a for-profit construct, you really want to be able to deny services so you can make more money. Well, the reaction was swift with lots of angry responses and some users posting images of what were purported to be racist and sexist statements from a now deleted Twitter account with the handle @GaryTeagues. Adam Peck brings us the next offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. River City Hash Mondays. Well, it looks like Kris Kobach is going to be sued while he is running for office there in Kansas. A court ruled in favor of a petitioner who wants to know why he and other residents of Kansas were kept off of voter rolls. And I got to say, it's not just Kansas that Kris Kobach is responsible for kicking off voter rolls. Last month, Kansas Secretary of State Kris Kobach barely squeaked past Governor Jeff Colyer. In a contentious and scandal-ridden Republican gubernatorial primary, he'll face Democratic nominee Laura Kelly, a state senator. And while Kansas is as reliably red a state as they come, Kobach will now have to campaign in a general election while under grand jury investigation. The Kansas Supreme Court ruled on Friday that a grand jury must be convened for the purposes of investigating whether Kobach deliberately neglected to register voters ahead of the 2016 election. The decision stems from a formal complaint brought by Lawrence, Kansas resident Stephen Davis, who alleges that Kobach willfully and maliciously chose not to process online voter registrations in 2016, effectively blocking legal residents from voting in that year's elections. Lower courts initially rejected Davis's request for a grand jury, but the state's Court of Appeals overturned those rulings, paving the way for a grand jury investigation. The lower court said, "Oh, you don't have any standing." Yeah. Or they tried to imply implied immunity. Kobach is no stranger to legal trouble. In an attempt to combat Kansas's non-existent voter fraud epidemic, Kobach has made a career out of pushing for government-sanctioned voter suppression that disproportionately targets subjects of the population that are more likely to vote for, yes, Democrats. And in Kobach's mind, put the emphasis on the rat part of Democrat. Kobach, rat, click your heels. Zieg, yeah, you know what. Those efforts have largely been impeded or outright blocked by courts, but not without interference from Kobach himself. When one judge struck down a draconian state voter ID law, shepherded through the legislature by Kobach, he instructed the county clerks under his purview to ignore the court order. Because law and order doesn't matter when it's not his law and he's not making the orders. When another judge ruled Kobach must inform voters of their registration status, he refused to comply, leading to the courts holding him in contempt. He then used taxpayer dollars to pay the fines associated with that contempt order. His malpractice and misunderstanding of even the most basic legal principles is so severe, a federal judge ordered him to take 6 hours of continuing education classes. The grand jury investigation will now be taking place as Kobach tries to avoid becoming the latest embarrassment for Republicans, who have lost dozens of local, state, and federal elections in districts they've previously held on to for years, in some cases decades. In the first poll, conducted since the primary elections were decided, Kobach, in that red state of Kansas, has a 1-point lead over the Democrat Kelly. Adam Peck also brings us this last offering here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy from Think Progress, of course. Well, lawmakers in California passed new legislation that will restore virtually all of the net neutrality protections first introduced during the Obama administration. The bill is the most sweeping state legislation since current FCC Chairman Ajit Pai led a campaign to repeal those Obama-era regulations, arguing at the time that they were too imposing on the multi-billion-dollar telecommunications conglomerates that control most of the country's internet infrastructure. Yeah, too imposing. Predictably, the industry's largest lobbying group came out forcefully against California's new bill, which now goes to the desk of Democratic Governor Jerry Brown for his signature or veto, and he has yet to indicate whether he will sign the measure. If he does, the new law, which passed the legislature on Friday, will prohibit internet service providers from forking the web traffic of their customers into slower or faster lanes of service based on whether certain websites pay more. Throttling. It also bans ISPs from blocking or slowing down access to certain subsets of data, like video, and it will greatly reduce the degree to which providers can zero-rate certain kinds of data, effectively giving certain companies favorable treatment over others. The bill closely mirrors the net neutrality protections President Barack Obama fought for during his administration and imposed with the help of his FCC chairman, Tom Wheeler. I think it was it Laura? Yeah, it was Laura Ingraham who said that really Trump and the DOJ should take over Google and Facebook and Twitter, and hell, why not just take over the whole internet and treat it like a utility, and that way bias will never be seen again. Well, bias against them. And bias against them means any fact or legal case brought to the public attention. That's what they really want, of course. Let's get to our break, and when we come back, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, Crazy Rich Fun. Despite being hailed as a triumph of representation, Crazy Rich Asians is at its heart a familiar love story about a woman of modest means unknowingly falling in love with a wealthy man, much to the disapproval of his family. Constance Wu, best known to TV viewers for her role on Fresh Off the Boat, steps nicely into the Cinderella role as Rachel, a self-made economics professor who has no idea that her charming boyfriend Nick, played by newcomer Henry Golding, is a scion of one of Singapore's wealthiest families. It's not until he invites her to his best friend's wedding back home that she discovers he isn't merely well off, but, well, crazy rich. Of course, not everybody loves Rachel the way Nick does. In particular, Nick's mother, Eleanor, played by Michelle Yeoh, comes to the conclusion early on that she will never accept Rachel. Indeed, in her prim suits and tidy hairdos, Eleanor appears to be channeling the ladies of the Victorian era, much admired in aristocratic Singapore when she's ordering the help around or telling her son what to do with his life. Thankfully, with the help of a fairy godmother in the guise of Nick's over-the-top cousin Oliver and Rachel's old college friend, Go Peek Lin, played by a scene-stealing Awkwafina, this fairy tale will have a happy ending. It's not a spoiler to say that it does, because we're not sharing the details. While criticism can be leveled that the film fails to seriously look at class issues or go into why an NYU economics professor like Rachel would be seen as frivolous in the eyes of Nick's mother, the best thing about this movie is that it doesn't take itself too seriously. Crazy Rich Asians is meant to be fun, and in that effort, it succeeds 1,000 times over. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
Hi, I'm Scientific American podcast editor Steve Mirsky, and here's a short piece from the August 2018 issue of the magazine in the section called Advances, Dispatches from the Frontiers of Science, Technology, and Medicine. The article is called Quick Hits, and it's a rundown of some science and technology stories from around the globe, compiled by editorial intern Maya Miller. From Mexico, cavers and scientists in the Mexican state of Oaxaca discovered that the world's 9th largest known cave is deeper than previously thought. With a depth of 5,118 feet, it houses dozens of species not found anywhere else. From Brazil, archaeologists discovered a tooth from an opossum-sized creature that once inhabited what is now Brazil. The oldest known mammal found in the region to date, it lived somewhere between 87 million and 70 million years ago, when Tyrannosaurus rex still roamed. From Scotland, Microsoft has begun installing computer servers on the sea floor near Scotland's Northern Islands as an alternative to data farms on land. The idea is that the water will create a cool environment for the servers. From Zimbabwe, the oldest African baobab tree, roughly 2,500 years of age, died within the past decade, researchers found. 9 of the 13 oldest baobabs, all in Africa, have perished since 2005, possibly as a result of unprecedented climate change. From China, The Chinese government announced it will take on a new role in monitoring scientific misconduct. Such cases, previously handled by institutions, will be maintained in a national database and could disqualify scientists from applying for certain research opportunities and jobs. And from India, solar power is on the rise in India. In the first quarter of 2018, newly installed panels produced 3,269 megawatts. Solar power now accounts for 6.3% of India's total power output. That was Quick Hits by Maya Miller.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Hey kids and parents, it's back to school time. As you shop for school supplies and get ready for class, make sure you have emergency plans in place. Did you know that emergency preparedness plays a major role in school life? Throughout the year, schools actively prepare for natural disasters, outbreaks, and other emergency situations. Students and parents need to be aware and learn what to do during an emergency. Every family should build an emergency kit, make a family disaster plan, and be informed about events that could affect their community. Parents, take a few extra steps to help children be prepared. Make sure they know the full name, address, and phone numbers of parents or guardians. In our high-tech world of cell phones, memorizing emergency phone numbers is very important. Include a copy of this information in their backpack. Other items to keep in their backpack include water and non-perishable snacks, a pocket-sized first aid kit, a whistle to alert others for help, and a list of allergies, medical conditions, and medications. Make sure their school and teacher have a copy, too. Be familiar with different routes and ways to travel home, like walking, taking the bus, or riding home with another student who lives nearby. Establish a secret code word with your child and whoever takes them home from school to protect against an unauthorized person picking them up. This list is a great starting point to prepare your student for the upcoming school year. Customize these steps to fit your child's capabilities and needs. Ask school administrators and teachers about emergency preparedness plans so you know what steps they are taking to keep your child safe. Many schools have guidelines on how to shelter in place during natural disasters, how to secure classrooms during an emergency lockdown, and how to teach preparedness curriculum to students. Remember, emergency preparedness is important for everyone. Children who are prepared are more confident during stressful emergency situations. By following preparedness guidelines, parents, children, and school staff can improve their safety and peace of mind. For more information on school emergency preparedness, visit cdc.gov/children/schools. To learn more about disasters and emergency preparedness, follow @CDC Emergency on Twitter or visit emergency.cdc.gov. So, let's get prepared. Have a great school year.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. The American founders studied ancient Greek and Roman philosophers to learn about how to create the best form of government. Classical political philosophers taught that human beings are, by nature, social creatures. They taught that people have obligations to each other and to their community. Without their community, they could not survive or achieve human excellence. The Greek philosopher Plato taught that those who govern must be wise. The classical philosophers agreed that one purpose of government is to help people learn about and perform their civic and moral duties. That's all for today's podcast. The song Complacent is by Cheryl B. Engelhardt. Check her out online at cbemusic.com. 60-Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
In the new book, Insane, America's Criminal Treatment of Mental Illness, the author, Alyssa Roth, makes the point that the country's largest mental health providers are neither hospitals nor clinics, but rather prisons and jails. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Prisons and jails, where the mentally ill are warehoused, locked up without access to proper treatment, and abused and punished in ways that make their sickness worse, sometimes much worse. Think solitary confinement, which Amnesty International defines as torture. Of course, having a mental illness in no way predicts that a person will end up in the criminal justice system. That's just plain wrong. But a person who ends up in the criminal justice system may well have a mental illness or drug dependency. Indeed, 20, 30, 40, sometimes even 50% of the men or women locked up in a so-called correctional facility suffer from a mental illness. Roth's book does offer a sliver of hope by chronicling criminal justice mental health diversion programs. Those diversion programs work. They dramatically reduce homelessness and ER visits and police costs and the number of needed jail beds. But these programs are few and far between, which leads Roth to conclude that, quote, we not only are failing the people behind the razor wire and their families, but failing ourselves as well. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
Workers of America, rejoice! As our nation celebrates Labor Day with backyard cookouts, fun at the beach, or simply kicking back in a lazy boy and doing several rounds of 12-ounce elbow bends, we can all take comfort in the happy news that our economy is whizzing. Economists tell us that job creation is surging, wages are rising, and consumers are racking up record levels of purchases. What's not to like about all that? Two things. First, the economists' claim about wage growth is a sham, covering up the shame that top corporate executives and major shareholders are grabbing nearly all of the economic gains produced by America's entire workforce. The so-called nominal wage, i.e. the sum that workers see on their paychecks, has risen only 2.7% in the past year, a very mediocre result for the 82% of the labor force who are non-managerial worker bees. Second, that nominal wage is not the worker's real wage, for it doesn't take into account the very real fact that consumer price increases eat up the buying power of people's paychecks. Indeed, while nominal wages are up 2.7% in recent months, the price of everything from gasoline to groceries is up by 2.9%, effectively slapping working families with a wage cut. Sure, the economy is whizzing on the working class. This is Jim Hightower saying, so all the rejoicing on this Labor Day is coming from the gated zip codes of the rich. For example, in the same year that workers took a pay cut, the CEOs of America's 350 largest corporations had an 18% jump in their pay, hauling in an average of $18.9 million each. In a lifetime of labor, the typical American worker would not be paid as much as those honchos took in 1 year. Those few are getting rich enough to air-condition hell, and I think they'd better be pooling their money for that project.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
From United Nations headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 Minutes. This broadcast is on holiday until September 10th, but instead of running repeats, we've asked some go-to foreign policy experts what they'll be paying attention to in the weeks to come. Jeff Ramsey is the Senior Director for Venezuela at the Washington Office on Latin America and has been watching the flow of migrants leaving Venezuela, trying to start a new life somewhere else in South America.
I was actually on the Colombian border again just recently, and the situation there is just heartbreaking. In most cases, it's people who were living middle class or lower middle class lifestyles up until 3 or 4 years ago. You know, they've seen their savings wiped out by inflation, and they're having to accumulate all of their assets and sell it off at pennies on the dollar.
Whereas previously Venezuelans could easily travel to neighboring countries, the sheer number of Venezuelans now escaping economic and political conditions in the country have prompted neighbors to impose new border restrictions.
In the last year, the rest of the countries in the region that are receiving migrants have really tightened their restrictions. It used to be that if you were Venezuelan, you could travel on to Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, just by showing your national ID card. You didn't have to have a valid passport. And that's no longer the case.
Not surprisingly, the black market price for passports in Venezuela has skyrocketed. Looking on from the capital Caracas, Ramsey says President Nicolas Maduro may not mind that there's an exodus from his country.
I think the Venezuelan government is happy to see those leave who can, because it's, if you think about it, it's a way of voting with your feet. The people who are most affected by the economic crisis and are most disenchanted with the government and its policies are, in many cases, the ones leaving.
Luke Vargas, The United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. Labor Day, too, for that matter. Well, let's begin with weather from around the world, and we always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 48 degrees, a little chillier. It's all about the angle of the sun as we move steadily towards fall. Yes, and we're going to be a bit cooler today than we were yesterday. We were about 95 yesterday, and we are expected to have a high today of around 90. So I'd say upper 80s, low 90s. We will be sunny all day. Right now, winds are out of the southwest at a negligible 1 mile per hour or less. And it will be kicking up, as it usually does in just a couple of hours, to its usual 5 to 10 miles per hour. And it will be shifted out of the north-northwest and then continuing at that clip this evening, but shifted out of the northwest. And that's nice. So we should have a low tonight in the upper 50s. That would be nice. And high tomorrow also in the low 90s. So a little warmer for tomorrow. We'll see. Ragweed pollen is at moderate. The air quality index right now is at, it's at 48 parts per million. That's in the moderate range. The daytime UV index is high at 7. High pressure is still holding a bit steady, though that low pressure is trying to kick it down some, and we'll see how that works. Right now, pressure is holding steady at 29.98 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity here in the region is at 67%. All right, weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 74 and sunny. Paris is 75 and partly cloudy. Rome is 76 and partly cloudy. Kiev is 87 and fair. Kabul is 73 and fair. Hong Kong, 78 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 76 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 52 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 55 degrees and cloudy. And New York is 83 degrees Fahrenheit, sunny with a heat advisory. So stay cool, New York. I know you will. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. To mention before we get on to this first story here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays by Bob Brigham out of Raw Story. Before we get into that, I wanted to mention that I had a wonderful weekend with my granddaughters and their great-grandma, and they all had a great time, and we visited with extended family, like, well, my sister and my nephew and his wife and all the kids, and we had a wonderful barbecue grilled picnic yesterday here at the grounds at Positively 3rd and Marie, and it was fun. Did a bit of grilling, a bit of barbecue, and like I said, it was fun. It was a Labor Day weekend celebrating the last bit of summer. Well, summer will linger, even though the angle of that sun is such as it is. All right. Well, the Federal Bureau of Investigation spent years attempting to flip Russian oligarchs. And two of the leaders of that secret program were top Department of Justice official Bruce Ohr and former British spy Christopher Steele, both of whom have been repeatedly attacked by Donald Trump, going deep after Russian oligarchs. And now somehow all their work is suspect because they have a bias against a treasonous mobster? I came so close to the F word. So close. One of the Russians targeted in the program was Oleg Deripaska, who is known as Putin's oligarch for his relationship with Russian Federation President Vladimir Putin. Or first began discussing Deripaska during a November 21st, 2014 meeting in Washington, D.C. The Department of State helped facilitate meetings for the secret program by allowing Deripaska to visit the U.S. on a diplomatic passport in 2015 and 2016. Convicted felon and former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort was also mentioned in the report. In 2017, Ohr reportedly asked Deripaska to give up Manafort. Deripaska has claimed that he would speak to the House and Senate Intel committees, though whether he would do so absent an immunity deal has been in dispute. Turned the oligarch. Give up Manafort. Manafort, how many times did Manafort give the entreaties to Deripaska? Have we been made whole? I got your man into the White House. Have we been made whole? And Bruce Ohr was investigating that.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Finishing up at the chef's table here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays and Labor Day, is an article out of Reuters. A 200-year-old museum in Rio de Janeiro was hit yesterday by a massive fire. Images from television station Globo showed threatening its collection of more than 20 million items ranging from archaeological findings to historical memorabilia. According to Globo's website, there was no information yet on potential deaths, injuries, cause of the fire, or extent of damage at Rio's Museo Nacional. Well, who cares about that? What about all those museum artifacts? The fire broke out after visiting hours and was still raging and appeared to be growing through the night. Representatives from the fire department did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The museum, which is tied to the Rio de Janeiro Federal University and the Education Ministry, was founded in 1818. It houses several landmark collections, including Egyptian artifacts, and the oldest human fossil found in Brazil. Well, it's a terrible, terrible loss. And 200-year-old museum, say what you will about museums or whatnot, but it hurts my heart to have something like that just destroyed, as much as it hurts my heart when it's done by guile and aggression. Artifacts throughout Egypt and the Middle East being destroyed. It's bothersome to erase civilizations. And in this instance, it may be accidental. We don't know. We will find out. But I guess their fire suppression units were not working properly, if they had them. Scary about that aspect. Well, we better get out of here. It is Labor Day. We got lots to do for the rest of the day that people sometimes have off. Most everybody works. But we'll be back here tomorrow for Terrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Breaking news, of course, on Netroots Radio throughout the day and the night. So stay tuned to Netroots Radio for that breaking news. And we will visit with you tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. Tombe voici les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.